Welcome to Gamer Thoughts 2009 film. If you don't care about these disclaimers, I try to keep them short and relevant, but your mileage may vary. Feel free to skip right ahead to the section you want to watch via the description box. This video contains spoilers, possibly including for Crank 1 and 2. Originally, I wasn't going to rewatch the Crank movies, but then, I don't know, I just felt like it, so I'm recording this Saturday. I watched Crank 1 Monday and Crank 2 Friday. So in about 3 weeks, I've watched Crank 1 3 times and Crank 2 2 times in 2 weeks. I don't know, I can't really explain. I love them more with each viewing. And I probably, if I spoil any other movie than these three, I'm definitely going to warn before I do so. And the following is a short list of movies that are similar to this. And I'm not going to be spoiling them, but I will compare this to, you know, there are things that I feel work better in these other movies. Okay, I'm probably not going to be talking that much about The Running Man with, you know, Schwarzenegger. I watched it once, like 10 years ago. I really don't remember that much of it, and yeah. But I might be comparing this to Battle Royale, which I rewatched a couple of weeks ago, and Hunger Games 1 through 4, which I rewatched over the weeks leading up to this. I honestly really don't need much of an excuse to rewatch the Hunger Games movies. I mean, I've watched the first one 5 times by now, you know, once when it came out in theaters, once when the second one came out in theaters, another for the third, another for the fourth, and now again, yeah. So, you know, those films comment on reality television, violence in reality television, gladiators in reality television, celebrated life and the sides of it that many don't realize, things you weren't warned about before you became famous, and a movie like The Truman Show also comments on reality television. I mean, I think Gamer wants to comment on some of these things. It just doesn't really, it rings kind of false, but I think I will get more into it later in this video. I record this as soon as I can get to the computer after watching the movie. I probably will swear in this video, and I'm definitely going to be talking about some of the material in it that got it the H rating that it got. Please note that this is not a review, this is a series of, well, thoughts. Some of it is analysis, some of it is MST3K riff tracks and other jokes, etc. Thoughts that I had while watching in chronological order, as well as before watching, and those are separated into the first 2 sections. Time goes up in the description box. And then the final section, I get into stuff I think is worthwhile to get into on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, and Wikipedia. And before recording this vlog, I had read all but the IMDb user reviews, and I've almost definitely forgotten at least some of what I read, since some of it I read, you know, weeks ago, some of it a month ago. If you're not interested in the contents of all 3 sections, I invite you to only watch the ones you are interested in. And this video is not me saying I'm smarter than you, or know more or know better than you. The stuff I say in this video, I'm not saying only I could or have thought of it. It's just stuff I want to talk about, think others will enjoy listening to. I made this video to discuss an issue that doesn't affect me, or doesn't affect me as much as it does certain minorities. I'm not trying to lecture those that it affects. In part, I'm speaking to others who are not in those minorities, so we can better empathize with those minorities. And part, I'm expressing my interpretation of the material, not claiming it's as valid as the interpretation by members of the minorities. Let's see. Sorry, just making sure my phone is on silent. There we go. I try not to review films, games, or TV shows that fall into genres that I don't like. I realize an argument can be made in favor of talking about genres that you don't like, but it's not really what I want to do with these videos. I don't personally want to give a negative review to something where, and I basically say, this movie is not the kind of thing that I would ever like, and because of that, it is a bad movie. That's not the kind of reviews I want to do. I'm going to be saying a lot of negative things about this movie, but it is the kind of thing that I should like it more than I do. You know, if it were better at doing what it purports to do, I would like it a lot more. And like I said, I love Crank. I love the style of Neville Dean Taylor. Now, let's see. As much as I love the genres this movie falls into, it does tend to treat, let's see, yeah, treat various groups badly, such as women, making them disposable, using misogynist tropes, making them, you know, useless. They're not strong. They're sexualized against their will, and are only there for that purpose. Sexually assaulted or raped without the film exploring the effect of it, etc. And yeah, sadly, this movie, you know, I wrote that in the notes as a excuse me, not specifically for this movie. I wrote that since those are things that are problems in, you know, this is in part an action movie. I guess, yeah, it's mostly the action. It's more the action movie genre than, you know. It is also partly sci-fi, but a lot of sci-fi actually, I eh, it's a mixed bag, but it's more of a sci-fi thing. Yeah, I think the reason I wrote genres was because there are action horror movies that I'm going to be doing videos on, and the horror movie genre, yeah. But yeah, everything in, you know, this movie does pretty much all the things that you can do to, you know, treat women badly. The If you removed, you know, basically the reason that Cable has a wife is so that she can be treated badly by other characters, and so that he has someone to rescue. And, you know, the reason he has a daughter is so that the threat of her having a bad life is something that he can be fighting against. Because really, if you removed the two women from, okay, I'm gonna try to refer to him by his real name because he does keep saying that he doesn't. Cable is not his name. Tillman. The If you remove the two women from Tillman's life, you're still left with him trying to break free of this control, and he would probably still want to kill Ken Castle, but suddenly it's not quite as, like, this is one of the many movies, action and some other genres, where the writers add female characters to the life of the protagonist, not because they think that women are, you know, individual people and female characters should thus be treated with respect, but because if you remove them, then suddenly the protagonist comes off less sympathetic. Excuse me. Now, ultimately, this movie doesn't have a big problem with its depiction of ethnic minorities. I don't know. I mean, I guess it does kind of play into that. You know, Hackman is scary. You know, he's a scary, big, strong black man who's crazy and violent, and yeah, so there are definitely some tropes there as well. Let's see, and yeah, so you know, overall the movie fares poorly when it comes to those aspects. And let's see. I don't think I ever ended up putting in a note, so I'm just briefly going to put it here. Are we supposed to care about Simon? I can't quite tell. I mean, ultimately, almost every single character in this talks like an asshole. So the fact that when we meet him, he almost immediately starts talking like an asshole, I don't know if that's supposed to make us not sympathize with him. I mean, I guess Tillman doesn't talk like an asshole all that much, and I don't think we hear Angie talk like an asshole all that much, although, I mean, how much of the movie does she even spend saying words that she means to say? You know, she doesn't get that much screen time where she isn't being controlled by someone. So, but I figured, Tillman, they could have made him more obnoxious in what he says. Although his character is also there are chunks of the movie where he doesn't talk much. Excuse me. But yeah, like Simon, are we supposed to have sympathy for him, or is it just that, well, there needed to be a player character because it's about it's about people playing this game, so it would be silly if there wasn't any player character, and obviously we're not supposed to empathize at all with the obese individual controlling Angie in society. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Simon barely performs a plot function. He helps, yeah, there at the end, he's part of why Tillman is able to kill Ken, and it seems to sort of celebrate, you know. So yeah, I guess we're supposed to care about him, but the movie just doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, so let's see. When I talk about the quality and what I'm doing a video on, I try to strike a good balance between being appreciative of both intentions and results, criticizing things I genuinely feel should be criticized, and I try to judge the subject on its own terms. I'm not going to be criticizing this. I'm not saying that this movie had to be on the level of the Hunger Games movies, for example. That's not what it's aiming, and also I realized not a single Hunger Games movie had come out by the time this. I feel like maybe at least one of the books had come out, but anyway, you know, and like I said, I'm in no position to compare it to Running Man. I think I watched at least one of the Rollerball movies. I'm sad to say it was probably the remake. I remember nothing of that. I'm not 100% certain that I watched it, but I think I might have. But anyway, Battle Royale is from like 1999, isn't it? So that had come out. I'm not saying that this had to be better. That Gamer had to be a better movie than Battle Royale. That's not what it's going for. I'm not saying that it has to be better, but it doesn't completely succeed in what it tries to do, and that's part of why, the Crank movies, they get, they what they set out to do, they accomplish. You don't have to like the movies. I completely understand hating those movies, and there are definitely aspects about them that I'm really not fond of, but you the things they set out to do are not easy to accomplish, but they did accomplish them. So let's see. I define a good movie as one where the good outweighs the bad, and vice versa. For a bad movie, this can mean that a movie otherwise mostly good or bad, or I consider actually overall bad or good. And this one, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have to go outside the binary of good or bad. It's really somewhere in the middle because it definitely has some good things, but a bunch of those are undone by some really bad things. Yeah. Now, let's see. I got this on sale, so anything negative I say in this video is not out of bitterness. I also do not feel like the movie wasted my time. Nobody forced me to watch it or to make this video about it. It's not that I'm upset at how this compares to other movies like it. I don't have some personal vendetta against anyone who worked on making it. To the best of my ability, the negative things in this are the negative things I say in this are fair criticisms based on budget, when it came out, what it was trying to achieve, etc. I watched YouTube videos and special features on DVD before doing this video. This is my first viewing of the movie, but briefly, I also forgot to put this in the notes. I knew most of the twists because when Filmbrain first put out his video talking about Gamer, which I guess was like 10 years ago, I watched that video, so I've known for a long time, what happens in the movie in broad strokes. Most of the plot points I knew going in. That might also mean that I had an easier time following it than other people. I completely understand people who watched this and left and were like, what was the deal with this, that, and the other thing? Because there are things that it really doesn't make enough of an effort to explain. I think some of these things you are legitimately just supposed to either just straight up guess or yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Me making jokes on this should not necessarily be taken as me thinking the thing I'm joking about is actually bad, me wanting to make light of the subject, etc. I simply find it very difficult not to MST3K over eyes everything I watch and play. I don't have a problem with violence and gore in general. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies and movies in general. I also love Cronenberg's The Fly. I don't have a problem with film sexuality, nudity, disturbing and upsetting material in general. Monster is one of my favorite movies. And in my opinion, the only way sex can be wrong is if consent is violated and or it's cheating, and that's obviously where this gets into problems, that most of the almost all of the sexual activity in this movie violates consent because of, it's in the game society. The this is, I mean, I guess that the sex that conceived, I'm not even sure she was given a name, Tillman's daughter, that I like to think was consensual, but other than that, every single time there's sex in this, it's violating consent. And right, so my own quote-unquote film critic rating for this, I think at the end of the day, I land on a 5 out of 10, because ultimately I can't really go above 5 because of all the things that it does wrong. It kind of, there are things that it gets, that I personally do like the style, although I think they went to, yeah, I love their style in the Crank movies. I feel like here they went a little too far. The scenes go on for a little, the Slayers games go on for a little too long. They get a little too disorienting, where at the end of the day, in the Crank movies, you've got this one guy and he's trying to catch up to and or kill these other guys. It's not that, it definitely gets your adrenaline pumping, much like the titular character, but you're never really, confused, because at the end of the day, there aren't that many different things to keep track of in those movies, where in this there's so much going on, and it just really doesn't, you have Tillman trying to get to again, I'm speaking of the Slayers games. I'm not talking about every single scene. I'm talking specifically about the Slayers games, which is a huge part of the attraction of the movie. We want to see action. You know, you don't go to a movie starring Gerard Butler in an action movie to not see good action. You know, that's kind of, you know, that's why. Excuse me. I mean, I'm not going to hold it up right now, but one of the DVD, you know, one potential cover for the DVD is almost nothing but his face, you know, and then it slightly comes apart and you see Simon behind, but you know, and his name is very prominent on the various covers and such posters and like. But the Slayers games, you know, you have Tillman trying to get to the save point, which it can be hard to get a good sense. You know, occasionally they'll bring up the graphic. I very much appreciated the graphic, saying, you know, it giving a general direction and saying how many meters were left before he reaches it. But then, you know, like basically anything that Tillman does, you know, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I find that the movie doesn't do the best job of quite explaining. I mean, I guess it is just that almost all of the time Tillman is being controlled by Simon, and then there's like, you know, yeah, when he says "turn me loose," Simon does that, and then he's in control. But the rest of the time in Slayers, Simon is the one in control, and let's see the. But yeah, you know, you have that. Actually, yeah, okay. I guess it's not that. Maybe my criticisms of the there being too many elements. The yeah, for now, one of the big criticisms of the action scenes is the Slayers segments is that it's filmed and edited to be very confusing, and I'll get more into that in the first second section. But when Tillman makes his escape, then you have that everyone in the world, including Ken Castle, are watching as the you know, yeah, in addition to Simon letting Tillman free to do what he wants, and Tillman, you know, there are so many elements at the same time that in and of itself is not a problem. But then it becomes a problem that the stylization requires so much. You know, I would not be able to explain this as well as Lindsay Ellis does. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's one of the videos she did on the Transformers movies. So if you go to her channel, which, you know, you should go to her channel. There are a million reasons to go to her channel already. If you go to her channel, and you know, it's I want to say that the series is called The Whole Plate, and I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's something, you know, once you have all the titles, you can pretty quickly tell. It's called something along the lines of why is it so hard to remember what happens in a Michael Bay movie or in a Transformers film, something like that. And yeah, I'm you know, but it has to do with the way the movie, you know, the way it's filmed and edited. And again, the way it's filmed and edited, I love that in the Crank movies. And the problem is when you combine the two, and that's a big problem here, is combining their style with the you know, the more complex ideas and complex plot here. You know, I don't know if they, you know, it's been a while since they last did much of anything, the Neville Dean Taylor. If they start making movies, you know, honestly, I think there's a chance that a Crank 3 would be well received. If they, I think they have to stay in their niche. You know, I think they have to basically, you know, don't make like 7 Crank movies, but make, you know, make a bunch of movies that are similar to Crank in some ways. Just come up with different concepts that, but don't try to tackle something like this. I really don't think, if they when they made this, they didn't have the props to pull it off. And if they're going to try again, I really think they need to ditch the style. And I really, at that point, why even bother using Neville Dean Taylor? I don't think that, I don't think it's really the concepts in this are not really their forte. It's putting wild things on camera. That's which they do really well in Crank, and filming and editing it in a really you know in this very fast, you know frenetic, I think is the word, way. But yeah, the because you have movies with where there are action scenes where a lot is going on. You have The Dark Knight Rises. I know not everybody loves that movie, but I think we can all agree that it's a lot easier to follow the action in that movie than it is in this movie. And Christopher Nolan is one of the people who still understands that it's nice when we can see what's going on in an action movie. We want to be able to see. If we didn't want to be able to see what's going on in the action movie, you can just spin around a few times and then sit back down and try to follow it. We don't need to. I'm not saying there's never a place for something like shaky cam, but this really, yeah, it's become entirely too common in action movies. Let's see. Right, and my personal rating is, I guess, ultimately a 6 out of 10. And that brings us to first. Yeah. First section. Well, it took me 27 minutes to get there. Notes taken while watching. And I'm going to very briefly start with just some stuff that I figured people would want to know before hearing my thoughts on the movie. I'm going to very briefly explain where I'm at on video games. I wouldn't call myself a gamer. I don't think I really belong in that community, but I do love video games. I've been playing since I was, when I was 7 years old, I was playing the original Prince of Persia, the 1989 video game, and I loved it. I can play that game to this day. Today I get more enjoyment out of the more recent, the ones they made after the one they called 3D. The Sands of Time trilogy, and the two that are sort of set around the same time, and the 2008, I want to say the 2008 version, not reboot. I heard someone called it a reboot. I'm like, it's not supposed to be the same prince. There are many different princes throughout different times. Anyway, let's see. So, yeah, and if they make another one, I'll play it. But anyway, I'm not going to list my favorite games right here. If you want to know, you can check out my video more about my channel where I talk about it. And there's a specific section. You can't miss it. Just go to the description box. There's one called My Favorite Video Games. So, yeah. So, let's see. Yeah, so I've already said some of the following, but I kind of love both Crank films. I feel like the director do a great job at balancing their crazy style with not being over long, and outside of this movie, not getting over complicated and stuff. I wouldn't say they never get self-indulgent, sorry. And as much as I love their style, I hate Michael Bay's style. So it's not that such can't be done wrong. His movies are way too long, and think they're smart, not dumb. when, you know, Neville Dean Taylor and their Crank films realized that their films are just dumb fun. And that's one of the problems, again, with this movie, that they went, ah, what's it called? They tried to make something that, at least in their minds, was smart. They were trying to comment on things instead of just doing things that they thought were fun. And yeah, but I don't think there's a single movie by Michael Bay that I was gonna say that I like, but honestly, I think I hate every single movie by him I've seen. I used to have this friend who did like his movies and kept telling me I had to watch the next one and the next one and the next one. He literally said once that Pearl Harbor was a better movie than Black Hawk Down. He's not my friend anymore. Not because of that, but that is one reason that I'm grateful he's not my friend anymore. I haven't heard from him in like 10 years. I'd like to think that his taste has, you know, been refined since then, but last movie I heard him talk about was sorry, not the Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine, which he thought was good. It's actually great. Yeah, he really loved it, so not sure there's much hope for his taste in movies. But anyway, just briefly, Michael Bay, let's see. I watched both of his Bad Boys movies. I watched Armageddon, which is there aren't very many movies I hate more than Armageddon. Pearl Harbor, The Island. I guess those are them. I think those are them. I haven't watched any Transformers movie. I don't intend to. I think if you told me, if you forced me to watch all of the movie Armageddon, if you said you can't eat until you've watched all of Armageddon, I would probably starve to death. And this is, I'm not talking about if I had to watch it in a single sitting. You know, I'm talking about, I don't think if I were allowed to watch like 1 second at a time, I still don't think I would be able to get through the whole thing before I had starved to death. Yeah, I don't. I think there are interesting ideas in the island, but then, you know, if you've watched MST3K, you know that all of those ideas came from a different movie, and it's I do kind of think that it's amazing that Michael Bay watched Parts the Clonus Horror and basically remade it, only glossier. Like, it's not less stupid. It's not less cheesy. It's just cheesy in different ways. Yeah, it's pretty incredible that and apparently he was sued by the director, I want to say, of the original, and the dude won because they were like, it's the same movie. It's the same movie. Like, he changed so little to make the you know, it's just it's Parts the Clonus Horror as directed by Michael Bay. You know, it's not his interpretation. It's just, it's if he was given the script, you know, that's if he directed the same script almost. Excuse me. And at least if you watch the Parts of the Clonus Horror with MST3K, at least it's funny. Anyway, right, and this is where we get into the notes in chronological order. Sometime from this exact moment, see, this text suggests that the movie is set in our world, and that we're supposed to think of this as something that might happen to us if we're not careful and such. And it just, I really don't think, it's just extremely difficult to imagine that the world we live in would ever become particularly similar. You know, like I'm sure there is Like, let's see, some of the technology, some of the technology I could imagine as like potentially existing in the future, but the cynical way that all these people view all this death and this all this killing, I just it's just not the yeah. Let's see. You know, as a quick, the Hunger Games works because it takes the class struggle and exaggerates it and says, well, currently rich people, just let poor people. No, no, yeah, that's the thing. It's not the rich people just let poor people fight against each other. Rich people actively encourage poor people fighting against it. The rich make the poor fight for table scraps when the rich, if they just shared a tiny little insignificant, Elizabeth Warren came out and said that she would like to tax the what was it 2%? I feel like it was 2% of like all that they make above, like, what was it, 50 million or something. And then Trump comes out and says she wants to tax it 100% because he's a complete and utter moron and people believe his lies. And that's the thing. I think in his head, I'm not sure he can tell the difference. I think he might think that if he starts giving even a little bit of money to people who are, well, I guess poorer, because he really hasn't proven that he has very much money at all. He refuses to show his tax returns, which obviously is also so that he can hide all the illegal stuff he's done when it comes to taxes. But still, he's scamming people for, comparatively very little money, and people just take his word for it that he's actually rich. But anyway, let's go with people poorer than him. That, if he starts sharing his money with people who have less, that, oh, that's it. He's just going to have no money at all, which, I can understand why, if that is how rich people feel, I can understand why that might make them feel insecure, but I think that's what therapy's for. Just like go to therapy until you've conquered that insecurity and then start sharing the wealth. It's insane that it's legal for rich people to just sit on this much money while poor people are literally dying. It's legitimately just absolutely absurd. It's not like they made the money off the sweat of their own brow. They're taking advantage of people. They should be forced to pay a living wage. Anyway, this video is not for that. Let's see. What I was saying was, Hunger Games just exaggerates that the rich in and it's also important to remember, Hunger Games is set like a good bit into the future. I'm not sure. Are we ever told the year? But they keep talking about, oh, in the past, and she'll make reference to something that's there now. So it's like, it's a while after all of this, So the let's see. It helps that it's a bit into the future, and and the dictatorship, and it is just that it's an exaggeration of how today the rich force the poor to fight each other. And it's not an armed combat to the death in the real world, but it is fighting to survive. Because if you stay poor your entire life, then you spend your entire life worried that you'll have even a single, what's the thing, the the regular American can't survive a $400 medical emergency, I think. And that was before a bunch of people were laid off because of Corona. And then, like, the CEO will brag about how he's got enough money to, like, at that point, he is literally begging people to take his money away from him. That's a cry for help. Anyway, the let's see. Yes, so, but the idea that in this, I suppose I can understand the idea that a lot of people in the world of the movie gamer, that a lot of people would be relieved when death row inmates die, but then they're also cheering on Cable, even though they think he's, they believe that he's going to win he's going to win match number 30, and he's going to be set free. So it's obviously not that they think it's a bad thing for, a death row inmate to get out of the game, or they'd be talking about, oh, I like seeing so many death row inmates die, but I don't know, this Cable guy might actually win, so they're gonna they're gonna release him. I don't. That's not good. There's literally only one character who brings up that it might be a bad thing for him to be released, and that's the guy, denying Angie preventing Angie from getting what's it called, custody of her daughter. So that's not even, I don't think even Gina brings that up in the, she says a few things that are negative of Ken, but about Slayer's possibly society, I forget, but she doesn't bring up the issue of freeing these death row inmates and literally releasing them for, like, Tillman is there because he killed one person, and now he's going to be released because he killed, I don't know who may. I mean, we only see like 3 matches of Slayers, but he kills, like, I don't know, maybe 10 people or more over the course of those. So, you know, let's see. Yeah, so that let's go with an average of, let's say he kills an average of at least 3 people per match. 30 matches, that's 90 people, and that means he's going to be released. It's just, yeah. Anyway, and it's not that there couldn't be something there. You could have, let's say that they won, like, they were fighting over big cash prizes. They're killing for, because a lot of people want to see death row inmates killing each other, but they don't win their freedom. They win money, and then they choose what charity the money can go to or something. You didn't have to make it that they win their freedom. And at the end of the day, it's completely pointless because he doesn't win his freedom. Like, the only reason that they have in the plot that the concept includes that he might win his freedom is so that they can say, oh, but he's not going to win his freedom. Like, the idea is that the reason Tillman keeps agreeing to be in Slayers is so that he can win 30 games and be free and get, so they can be with Angie and their daughter again. But that's not, like, the it just doesn't make sense that people would both be cheering the idea, cheering the death of all these death row inmates, and cheering for the idea of one of the death row inmates being released. It's just the and the idea that, and yeah, sorry, that's one reading of it. Another reading is that they simply don't care. They don't care if these people live or die. They just want a good show. Well, I find it extremely difficult to believe that this many people would be so cynical. We have to remember that today you literally do have people trying to get TV shows off the air for doing significantly less. Like, honestly, I don't know for sure, but as far as I know, I haven't heard, oh, let's see, let me think. I'm trying to think of, has there been a reality show where someone died on the show? I know that I remember years ago reading that I want to say the Swedish, what's it called? Robinson, I want to say, where where they vote each other off the island, that whole thing. One of the people who was on the show was like, I think I read that she was really, like after she was on the show, people really hated her for something she did on the show or something. I'm not saying it was her fault. I'm saying that was how they rationalized the hatred. And she ended up committing suicide because the yeah. Other than that, I'm not sure that, you know, I don't remember offhand, at least, anyone dying on a reality show. I think that if that happened, I think the show might be taken off the air, and there would have, there would be like a lawsuit, and they would have to like adjust safety standards or something. So like it's not that I've seen clips of reality shows where it was like there was something physical that they had to do, and there would almost always be some kind of safety, like I feel like, is there something called American Gladiators? I think I saw a clip of that once, and there was like there were nets that they could fall safely into. If there was water they might fall into, I'm almost certain that the water was of a depth where they wouldn't get hurt by falling in. It's so hard to believe that there would be. And honestly, I feel like if the let's see, I don't know. I guess the movie would be a lot less, like, let's hypothetically say that instead of there being all this death, let's see, if it was, I guess, yeah, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say something like if people got really hurt, but then I think I you know, as you can probably tell, I really don't. I pay very little attention to reality television. I think it's disgusting I don't think I don't think there's reality television that I would ever be okay with, that I wouldn't think was disgusting. So I don't tend to watch very much of it. I do research some of it, but I also don't watch the like martial arts tournaments and such. I've never understood how other people can watch real life violence, but you know, other than something like boxing, which is just, it's insane that that's allowed. But anyway, like martial arts tournaments or something, I can understand the appeal. I like martial arts. I just don't want to watch any real, excuse me, I want to watch it staged, movies and TV. But anyway, I think some people do get badly hurt in martial arts tournaments, and that doesn't mean that the martial arts tournaments end, so that wouldn't really work for the satire element. Anyway, but yeah, I do think that it also, again, like the Crank movies, they very clearly are not really set in our world at all. Like the way that things work in the Crank movies, I mean, you might as well say that like John Wick is really set in our world. No, clearly this, it looks like our world, but there's or wait, I guess John Wick. I should briefly say I haven't watched those movies. I just know I've heard a lot about the world building. I guess technically in those movies, there's this underworld, but then you also have these, the suit that's like bulletproof, and no, there's stuff in those movies that clearly are not. I think it's fine to make movies. I know a lot of people hate it, but I don't think that just because it's live action that we should assume that it's set in our world. We're okay with it in books. When a book brings up a concept that we know can't happen in the real world, you don't throw the book to the ground and say that's unacceptable. So I don't know why people do it with movies, but anyway, and I acknowledge in some of my older videos I do that, and I was raised to think of live action entertainment as basically documentaries. It's stupid. Anyway, so excuse me, the let's see, excuse me, my back. That's still okay. So let's see, yeah, the Crank movies are not set in our world. They're very clearly set in something that yeah. I honestly, when I heard other people talk about how chaotic the game, excuse me, the gameplay of Slayers was, I feel like they should have maybe have brought up the save point graphic. I feel like that does a lot of legwork to help make it, excuse me, yeah, let's see, make it a lot less chaotic and impossible to understand what's going on. We see Tillman and Simon working together before the movie explains the relationship, but not very long passes before we fucking have it. I feel like he should have led with that. I don't know why they're saying they're talking about, oh, we're do you have it or don't you? And yeah, the other guy starts by saying, we're extremely close. I don't know why it really seems like they should just go direct. Whatever. Palindromes. Bob in this movie. Otto on The Simpsons. Yeah, I guess it checks out. And Ken starts talking about whether some people should be controlled. What's it called when foreshadowing is extremely obvious? For holing? I was gonna make a joke that Castle talking about the TV corporation's firewall sounded like a euphemism, but anyway, I hadn't made it into a euphemism when talking to what's her name, Gina. I think I'm just gonna call her Kira Sedgwick. You spook people. You spook me, and I'm a demon clown who spreads fear, for crying out loud. And we see Scotch, I think his name was, the guy that Tillman killed, but obviously we don't get the full context yet. Someone asked for Tillman's autograph, and he signs it. Thanks for the support, asshole. Compared to the Crank movies, this movie has a lot more of people shooting at each other, although they do still work in some really messed up visuals, which is more what they go for in those movies. And all the crowd shots from cities all across the planet really hammer home the cynical outlook on regular people by the directors. I mean, the movie does sort of have empathy for the death row inmates and how it would screw them up psychologically to just be waiting for the next game where they very likely will die. Excuse me. I mean, they're not really ridiculed when, I mean, this is a movie that, excuse me, makes fun of the vast majority of the I was gonna say characters, but really most of them aren't characters. Most of the people we see on screen are people in society and such, and they're, yeah. And we see the Humans Send program that will allow Simon to talk to Cable. It's even in a executable file, although I don't know what went wrong in Simon's digital education that he will accept an executable file from an unknown source. Who controls him? No one. But these are already people who are being forced to kill. I don't really understand how him not being controlled by someone is going to make things any worse. And then there at the end of the movie, he does still control him. So, anyway. It is a nice touch that Hackman literally killed someone so that he could go kill people in the games. I guess that's why it's supposed to be messed up, that no one will be controlling him, although I guess if he survives 30 games, he'll have to go and kill someone again to go back and get to kill again. And Tillman explains the difference between the Slayer and the player. And I'm even more confused by why it would be a good thing for Hackman not to be controlled. It sounds like having a player makes them better at seeing enough to do well at the game. He literally says, you know, the player is the eye. I guess there's very little chance that Hackman is related to Gene Hackman. Hackman singing "There Are No Strings on Me" is legitimately creepy. I still wish that really was in the movie Age of Ultron instead of only the trailers. But that movie is still amazing. Okay, literally, where the fuck did Hackman actually go? You know, he turns a corner and he's just gone. I was going to question how Simon can hear Cable. I mean, I don't know why anyone would give him a microphone for a game of Slayers, but then I guess it's him hearing his own voice because, you know, his ears are close to his mouth. And the Nanics means that Simon can hear it. That basically makes sense. Goodbye, freak. We barely knew you. No, literally, we hardly knew this guy at all. These are real humans, you fuck. I. It feels distinctly as though the directors are talking directly to the audience now, which is deeply ironic considering they're the ones who made this movie. No one is out there trying to get, you know, fighting a legislative battle, which it would be, in order to be allowed to put murder sports on television. I mean, I guess, I don't know, I guess maybe in like a third world country, you know, so a country without very many laws, but it still wouldn't be like this. And the movie is very clearly set in America. I mean, the let's see. I don't know. I guess maybe it's supposed to be like like a sort of bringing back of slavery thing. I don't know. Or commenting on how badly inmates are treated. I don't know. I guess the reason that Hackman doesn't kill Tillman with a gun is because it's that long range projectile that, you know, so what's it say? Yeah, he fires too close to Tillman. It doesn't have the you know, it doesn't arm immediately. It needs a little distance before it arms. It, you know, it was the one that we saw Simon buy. I feel like the movie could have made that clearer. if I hadn't, if I didn't know all the plot points of the movie already, I wouldn't have been able to, like, I watched the movie full well knowing that Tillman was not going to die there. So, the it was still tense. I didn't lose enjoyment of watching. I honestly, I can imagine a lot of people might have to watch it at least twice because just it's not that easy to follow, and I really don't think that's a I don't think I think Neville Dean Taylor do themselves any favors by making a movie that's this difficult to follow when it's also like a lot of people aren't going to watch their movies more than once, and yeah, and then it's just frustrating that you weren't able to follow. I mean, like if you need to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey more than once, yeah, okay, that's not a bad thing, but a movie like this you shouldn't have to watch more than once. But yeah, since I already knew that he wasn't going to die, I could sit there and think about why was it that he didn't die there. Dude, I'm right here. I can hear you. Exactly. That's why he didn't have to shout, to make sure that you could hear him. Is a death row inmate really, as a death row inmate, you really think his release would be a good thing? I think your issue might be with Ken Castle, not with her, dude. We will give your application the attention it deserves. And then he presses a button and you hear like this low like beep noise once or something. I thought that he was turning on a shredder or something. He was gonna demonstratively shred her application right in front of her or something. But I guess it's just like for signifying that the meeting is done. Tillman is again in his cell and someone talks to him. I'm not gonna lie, the fact that a disembodied voice is giving him important information, objectives, and such does feel a lot like a video game. Put it down. Put it down. Do you really want to piss off the people who have so much control over whether you live or die? What would he have done if they had like they can literally control him via the nanics? Why not just like I don't know, I guess if as long as Simon is playing they can't just shut down. I don't know. I'm not gonna comment on the whole getting drunk and pissing in the car engine thing. Film Brain covers it perfectly in his video on the movie. One thing, I forget if he brings this up, so I'm just briefly going to say it. Why would there be cars with functional engines anywhere near where Slayers played the game? Sure, they don't have gas in the tank, but still, why would you risk it? And the IMDb fact points out all the reasons why it doesn't really make sense that it would work anyway. I don't necessarily dislike the action, although I agree with those who say that it's confusing and doesn't need to be. But it is pretty cool when they're shooting at each other, when they're fighting each other, when they're driving. I mean, when those trucks chase Tillman, that's legitimately intense. It really feels as though if they catch up to him, he will die. They've got the big I forget what they're called, but they're like this trucks with this shovel thing on the front, and like if they get right up behind him, they're gonna and keep driving, his car is gonna be knocked over on the and land on its roof, and the crash might not kill him, but then the people in the truck can just get out and shoot him. So that is legitimately, and there's some really close calls. That was, yeah. And the Marilyn Manson Eurythmics cover plays again. This time almost as sort of a triumph as Tillman is escaping the games, where the first time it was at the very start of the movie. I like Hackman as the sort of main threat to Tillman. Let's see. If we're talking about like individuals who pose great threats to him, but then the last time we see him, it's very disappointing. Hackman is the only person Tillman shoots in the entire movie where he doesn't shoot to kill. He shoots him in the foot, and that's obviously just so that they can get. Of all the people, like, Hackman is the one who most deserves to die. All the people he kills in the Slayers games, they just want their freedom too. But Hackman is there to kill. So, and yeah, it's there so that he can be there at the basketball court later. And he dies almost immediately. So what was the point of that? It's that thing of like, it's not a there's some enjoyment to be had in the Crank movies when like someone when something ridiculously over the top suddenly happens to a major character, but when like in this movie Hackman is basically set up as the one that might actually be able to defeat the to defeat Tillman, but there's no what's the word, but yeah, but then there's not a proper payoff to that. I mean, at the end of the day, let's see, they have a pretty decent fight. The part where right before Hackman tries to shoot him, they have a pretty decent hand-to-hand fight there, and there are some threats both ways. Both of them threaten the other, and then in society, Hackman shoots Tillman, but Tillman was wearing body armor. And then Tillman catches up to him, shoots his foot off, and that's just it. Like, there's not enough of an ongoing fight between them. I think one movie I like to point to as something where you have a really strong, like, here you have the good guy, here you have the bad guy, or one of the bad guys, and that one of the bad guys is like, keeps getting into fights with the protagonist, so that we keep looking forward to the next. Each time one of the fights end, we know there's going to be at least one more fight between them. Unless the bad guy ends up, you know, yeah, we expect it to end with the death of one of them. The movie Transporter 2, I think, does a good job. And I guess it's best for me to not say who the bad guy who keeps fighting the good guy is, for those who haven't watched that movie. But yeah, I think that is a pretty good standard for, you should be able to match that. And this movie could have, but it doesn't. Think about, Hackman could have been in Slayers from earlier. There could have been, like, the two of them could have had a fight in the first, let's see, in the first match, and then, like, Tillman is about to try to shoot Hackman, but then a bunch of the enemy team, I think it's supposed to be team based, show up and start shooting, so he has to make a run for the save point instead. And then they meet up in the locker room, and they like get close to each other, and then there's like a piercing voice saying, "Step away from each other, or we shoot you both." And we see that there's like a guns in the walls, and cuts to like a of what's it called, like observation room where there's like guards standing at monitors, and one of them is about to press a button that's gonna use the gun to shoot them, and so they walk, to different, yeah, and then there's another confrontation in the second Slayers game. Actually, sorry, yeah, that's that you can leave that one as it is, because that's the one there already is. And then, yeah, and then in the third Slayers game, it could be that he's, no, yeah, actually, yeah, it's there as well. He's running up to shoot Tillman, and he actually gets really close. See, the movie actually does a better job than I had remembered. But that's true. Yeah, it does a decent enough job there. But then, yeah, see, the reason I forgot how decent a job it actually does is because of how disappointing that last bit. Like, I don't understand why you don't have a big fight scene at the climax between the two of them. I legitimately, the only thing I can think of is that you know, Neville Dean Taylor really like subverting expectations, but it's not the good kind of subverted expectation. Like, if I mean, I guess the thing with, once he shot the foot off, we don't expect to see Hackman again because he's not going to be able to chase them. But if Tillman had shot him in a way that was more definitively, he's going to die if they don't immediately get, and then the next time we see him, like, let's say that he's shot in the torso, and then the next time we see him, like, Tillman's like, what the fuck, and then, we a quick POV shot where he looks at the part of the torso where he was shot, and we see, like, there's a like, let's see, what would be coolest? I guess if we could tell that they had done some stitches there or something. No, yeah, there's a metal plate there, and I mean, they could get away with doing a quick zoom in and then, like, X-ray vision kind of thing, the way they do with the heart in the Crank movies. They could get away with that in this movie. We see that there are, like, stitches, and yeah, and they got him, like, a mechanical heart or something. Could be you know a slight, what's it called, like reference to the Crank movies, instead of Simon wearing a Crank shirt, which is just, so in the universe of Gamer, Crank is a movie. I which, again, yeah, I guess because it's supposed to be our world. It's, anyway. The Let's see. So I mean, I get, yeah, I get, they don't really have any actors in common other than the disco DJ uh, cameo by Venus slash Kalo. Anyway, yeah. So excuse me. Let's see. Yeah. So the that sort of thing. And then you have a big final battle between them. But all this build up, and then he's just not. He's just taken out so easily. They did a pretty good job working in the stuff you can do in society, the game, with the various poses and such. It's very clear that Angie is not doing what she wants to be doing. She's doing what the, what's it called? The, I guess I'm just going to refer to him as the obese gamer in the movie, wants her to do. And, they have the names that next to the head. It was a pretty convincing, and I appreciate that the game worlds look so different. Like, if you saw a single frame of Slayers or single frame of Society, you would immediately be able to tell the difference. That I'm not gonna. I was a little surprised by that, maybe because in the Crank movies, it really feels like they have different speeds, but they only have the one vehicle, if that makes sense. They don't know how to do any other style than the one they do. They just know that they shouldn't always have it cranked up to 11. Some of the time, their movie shouldn't move quite as quickly. But in this, excuse me, it's very easy to tell the difference between the, yeah. There's graffiti that says Slayers is bad TV. I feel like that might be missing the point, dude. So Alison Lohman is the one who's been talking to Tillman in the cell. And we get the humans fully explain, how Castle is able to, the money problems for the government and such. I understand that Tillman is telling the obese man controlling Angie to release control of her, but ultimately this is still a big muscular man screaming death threats in the face of a young woman. And Tillman survives being shot by Hackman because he was wearing the body armor that we saw Simon buy, or I forget if we saw him actually buy it or we just saw him look at the details for it, but I think it works okay that the we see Simon buy a gun or armor for Tillman, and then the next scene we see him using it. The yeah, let's see. What's the thing? Yeah, it's disappointing. It's one of a million action movies where it's like, if he wanted to kill him that badly, why didn't he shoot him in the head? Why did he assume that Tillman didn't have body armor? He has a gun. Why doesn't he just aim for the head? It's so frustrating to, yeah. How the hell did Kira Sedgwick know where to go to get Tillman? Again, we're told that Simon is just that incredible of a player. That's why he was able to get past 10 games, which is otherwise unheard of. I get that they didn't want other player characters in this movie. Player characters, movie characters that portray video game players. Anyway, I just feel like there should have been mention of someone else who did incredibly well at these games, or some kind of explanation as to why Simon is so uniquely skilled at this. It doesn't make any sense. Like, there are so many other movies where they would have explained that he's basically the chosen one, or there's some kind of thing that but it's just not explained, and it's like, why is no one else that good? Because apparently it's not that Tillman is just that good, and if it was, then why is he the one? Because we see that they can practice. We do see that they're allowed target practice. So, it's not that a lot of, excuse me, like, it'd be one thing if a bunch of these guys were in there because they got drunk or they got in a bar fight and then they killed someone, rather than actually, did Tillman have military training? I'm not sure I really, yeah, I think they say that he's got some kind of military training as well, and I guess that's part of why he's so he's as good at it as he is, but then that still doesn't explain why there's no one else, not one other person. They beat you over the head with that part of the concept. Nobody else has ever made it this far. So many characters bring that up, and it's just, yeah. I guess the reason that John Leguizamo and Zoe Bell, who puts Zoe Bell, you know, she's known as a stunt double. When you put her face in a movie, I don't know what makes you just kill her off without giving her something. Like, Tarantino has put her face in his movie several times, and I think every single time he's done it, he's given her something fun and memorable to do. And here, there's just nothing. I guess the idea is supposed to be that since it's a face we recognize from somewhere else, we're supposed to get into whether this person lives or dies. And then when they die, Neville Dean Taylor think that they've somehow gotten a reaction out of the audience, when really, like we've seen this a million times before, there's so many movies where, including big names, are killed off very unceremoniously. It's not, they're not, what's the word? They didn't come up with this themselves. They're just doing what a bunch of others have already done before them, and they're not doing it any better. And when the humans all die, it just feels like narrative convenience, and just we really we feel almost nothing for almost every single character in this. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I can only really speak for myself, but when I read other people's, it also seems like they didn't really get into. Maybe the people who really love the movie, maybe they really got into the characters, but when you read criticism of the movie, it feels like a lot of people just had a hard time really getting behind these characters. At the end of the day, Tillman is probably the one there's most chance of us empathizing with, and we know very little about him. For a lot of the movie, we really just know that he killed someone and he wants to get back out. As not, is it supposed to be that we're supposed to like look at our biases when we find out, oh, yeah, he killed someone, but it wasn't, it was outside of his, he didn't have any control over it. But it's such a uniquely and contrived concept, though, that it, yeah, there's no, like, there's nothing like it in the real world. And again, this is not really a movie that's very occupied with the whether we empathize with the characters. So I don't know, it really does, like, at times it seems like we are meant to sympathize with the death row inmates. And for that was when I really got into the movie. I felt like there was pathos in them sitting on the bus there, like, was it a bus? Anyway, I'm not sure we ever saw the outside of it, but anyway, the thing that transports them, and they're sitting there and they're just like, they're going insane because they don't know if they're gonna live or die, and they don't really have just, yeah, like, if more of the movie had been like that, that's the, like, they seem to be able to do it, they just don't want to most of the time, I guess, because so much of this movie is just doing really transgressive things, which again, is a lot of Crank. But in Crank, they're not also trying to do social commentary. Yeah, it really feels like, I mean, they work well together, right? It's not that one of them has one idea and the other has the opposite idea, and they kind of tug of war throughout movie production. I think it's the former, not the latter. But in this movie, yeah, you would think that one of them wanted social commentary and the other one wanted to do Crank 3. And were then shown fully what happened when Tillman shot Scotch. And again, like, when he's talking about, this is really scary. Why do you have a gun? What, that yeah, I really empathized with his fear, especially knowing already, because we already saw it. We already saw him shoot him. So, that yeah, I kind of wish that they would just go further in that direction. They clearly are capable of this really dark stuff that is about people in these awful positions where they might die at any moment, and but at the same time they can't control the urge to put really transgressive stuff on screen instead. Film Brain points out that given that Tillman has these memories, and that makes it really stupid that he was put in Slayers, stupid on Ken Castle's part. I mean, how easy would it have been to just, once he shot Scotch, just have him shoot himself? Or if you don't want to do that, deny him access into Slayers, or temporarily, it would make sense that he had that, like, that kind of authority, like, and let's see, another option would be maybe temporarily preventing Simon from controlling him for long enough that he would die, since apparently it's Simon who keeps him alive for so long, or like, just make it that everyone on the other team attack him specifically or something. It just, there's a million different ways that this could have, it just, and there's such an easy fix for this. Make it that Ken wasn't the one who was, like, make it that some techie was the one who, like, if Ken doesn't know that the yeah, here we go. Ken doesn't know that Tillman shot Scotch. He just knows that someone did. And he assumes that, yeah, actually, after that, he's, the after the, Tillman is taken away, the techie realizes, oh shit, if Ken finds out who it is, I'm gonna have a huge problem. I'm gonna tell Ken that after shooting Scotch, the test subject shot himself. And then when he tells Ken that, Ken, you have the classic, so we've tied up all the loose ends. We have, no, wait, there's one more loose end. There is you, and, shoots him, and now he doesn't know that, now he has no way of finding out that Tillman is the one. And when Ken had him shoot Scotch, he forced him to say something. And when Ken and Tillman are face to face in Ken's place near the end, maybe right before he stabs him, he says that thing right back to him. So, let's see if I can come up with something. Let's see. Yeah, let's say that, yeah, right before he shoots Scotch, Ken forces Tillman to say, Scotch says, dude, I trusted you. And Ken makes Tillman say, I'm one of the people you should never trust. And then he shoots. And right before he stabs, he's trying to get Ken to yeah, he says visualize it, but then apparently also Simon helped with the stab. But, so Tillman knows he has to weaken Ken's resolve, so he looks him right in the eye and says, I'm one of those people you should never trust. And Ken realizes, oh shit, the test subject is still alive, he knows everything, and as he realizes that, he becomes just slightly weakened, just enough that, his willpower becomes slightly weakened because he feels powerless suddenly. Maybe for the first time in his life, and it just, you could so easily fix all of these problems, but it's clear that they didn't really want to bother with that. They wanted to come up with messed up visuals to put on screen, and yeah. I do like the detail that Tillman can tell that Angie is now not being controlled by someone else. The way she moves or something, he can tell that this is now, and finally the camera isn't really going deep into sexualizing her anymore, even though she is still wearing what she wore in society. The lip syncing scene is glorious. I do agree that it's not enough of a climax for a movie that started so big. You know, so much of the action gets so big, and then this is, I don't know. I guess after it you have the fight between. I don't know if I even want to call it a fight between Tillman and Hackman, and then you have a fight between Ken and Tillman. But yeah, it's much too small. And yeah, way too small final fight between Tillman and Hackman. He snaps his neck twice. I don't know if the idea is supposed to be that it was necessary or just that it was cathartic, but yeah, he wants to be 100% certain this. See, and again, if the previous scene, if the last time they saw each other, he shot him in the chest, then him snapping his neck twice is like, okay, I guess I gotta kill you at least 2 times before you die or something like that. So there's only one left of the humans, Alison Lohman, and she helps Kira Sedgwick give Simon control of Tillman. Why didn't Ken have his people destroy the computer, or maybe leave some guards behind at least until Tillman was dead, which he was certain would happen soon after all. Like it's so there's so many obvious holes here. It's like and it's Kira doing it. She's not an expert at computers, even though she wasn't the one working with Luda. Let's see. I agree that this movie could have gone way above what action movies usually are able to do, but there are way too many pieces of contrived writing that are purely there for convenience. And Ken is way too easily defeated at the end. And we see them driving in the car again, very reminiscent of the flashback. And they drive into. Is that the same? Excuse me. Is that the same tunnel from? Excuse me. Ah, I can't believe I'm blanking on the title. See, I thought of it as I was watching the movie, and then I forgot to note, and now I forgot the Cabin in the Woods. I feel like it's the same tunnel as Cabin in the Woods. We didn't see what happened to the guy who controlled Angie. I guess that Castle's men just killed him. I'm not really sure why. I guess that's supposed to be cathartic for the audience. And don't get me wrong, that he really is. And I want to make absolutely clear, I don't mean physically, I mean psychologically. He is really awful. But yeah, I don't know why Castle would do it. It seems like they could just keep him from reconnecting to Angie. It would be much easier to cover that up than a murder. And since Tillman is, escapes Castle's place so easily there at the end, I guess the idea is supposed to be that Ken didn't have any security other than those Slayers. I don't know. I guess it's an example of his arrogance. He was certain that he could control Tillman and. Let's see. Right, and when Tillman is fighting those Slayers, we're no longer supposed to empathize with the death row inmates, despite how much pathos the movie has gone for with those. I mean, these are still people being controlled. Honestly, I feel like it would have been compelling if each time he killed someone there at the end, he felt really bad about it, but it was just the only way to go or something. Like, yeah, anyway. I really, honestly, excuse me, I want to see the alternate universe version of this movie where the two of them, like, buy some Ritalin from Kid Chevchelio's, focus, and just make a movie about how badly death row inmates are treated and how if we keep treating them that badly, you know, Slayers is what we might end up with or something. Because I really, honestly, yeah, for sure. The when I watched the movie, by far the people I felt the most for were the death row inmates in those scenes where they're talking about how they're going to die. And you have that one guy who's like picking at the back of his. And at first I was like, wait, how is he? But then we see, no, he's got a straight, he's got straight, no, sorry, razor blade thing, to get in there. And he does end up dying from trying to, obviously he can't remove it. We were told explicitly that they're tiny little fat fragments, but the yeah, so it's very much, yeah, there are a lot of scenes where that really is like, yeah, let's see. And obviously the people being controlled in society, but the movie spends more time demeaning them, where the death row inmates, when they're being transported for Slayer's games and such, we get more, yeah. So the movie is 81 minutes long without end credits and 91 long with them. And I thankfully, you know, when I watched Crank High Voltage, I had not realized that it would be a heavily edited, because I bought it in, through a German site. Thankfully, I realized, originally I bought a German copy of this movie as well, and I looked up, oh, it's supposed to be 91 minutes long total, but the German one is, 82 minutes total, with end credits. So I looked up, found an inexpensive one where, you could see on the website that it's 91 minutes. So thankfully it was very inexpensive. I bought that, so I was able to watch yeah. I might be done buying German DVDs, which is frustrating because there's a lot of money to be saved, but yeah. Let's see. And I do briefly want to say I'm very happy that I did buy the German one, because the German one has a ton of DVD extras, and the other one really doesn't have any at all. Notes taken before watching. So an hour and 10 minutes for the first section. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to rush through some of the following based on my back. Okay. So, like I already mentioned, I watched the 2 Crank movies, and other than that, Neville Dean Taylor, I also watched Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, which of the 4 of these movies, that's the only one that they didn't write. They directed all 4 of them, but I really don't remember that much of that movie. I remember liking it better than the first Ghost Rider. I'd be happy to watch it again. I would have bought a copy, but I didn't find a cheap one, so. And let's see. So yeah, this was produced by, yeah, you know what, I think I'm just gonna, no, I guess it's, no, I'm skipping through, yeah, and I had forgotten I'd only watched I've only watched Gerard Butler in this 300 and Dracula 2000. Yes, I have forgiven him for Dracula 2000. But yeah, I love him in both this and 300. And Michael C. Hall, I've only seen in Dexter, and I'd forgotten he was in Paycheck. And Amber Valletta, I've only seen in this and Transporter 2. And Logan Lerman, I love him in Fury. I don't have much of an opinion on him in Noah. He's obnoxious in The Three Musketeers, but I think he was pretty obnoxious for a while, But he's great in The Butterfly Effect. But yeah, it is very much like, yeah. No, I haven't watched any of the Percy Jackson movies. I don't think they would really be for me. And Terry Crews, let's see, yeah, I have watched Expendables 1 through 3, but the movies I like Terry Crews in are Street Kings, Harsh Times, Training Day, and The Sixth Day. And I think I may have watched White Chicks. It was not for me. Let's go with that. I had forgotten that Ludacris was in Max Payne and The Wash. I remembered him being in Crash, but yeah. And Kira Sedgwick I've only seen in this and Phenomenon. Excuse me. Not to be confused with Phenomena. So, excuse me. Obviously, part of the point of this movie is satire, and I'll get to that. But other than that, I think the idea with this movie was that it was made by and for gamers. One second. Yeah. Made by, for, and about gamers. Gamers were incredible at first-person shooters in an effort to celebrate that video game genre, and these gamers were excellent at them. I'm pretty good at first-person shooters. Anyway, but because of the cynical and bitter tone, it ends up feeling more like it was made by someone who isn't good at first-person shooters. Maybe they used to be, but they aren't anymore. And they're bitter about it, and they're also bitter about the game's Second Life, which, for those who don't know, that's apparently what Society was based on. I don't play Second Life. It doesn't really be. Honestly, if I hadn't heard other people compare it to Second Life, I would have thought it was just supposed to be The Sims, which I did play a little bit, but it's just not my kind of game. That's just give me. You don't have to give me something to shoot for me to play your game, but if you're not gonna, that's fine, but then give me something to sneak past, maybe some platforms to jump between. But you can't just say, oh, just do whatever, just these are people and you just tell them what to do. Well, to what end, though? Am I building up a base, maybe? Am I going to be attacked and I'm going to have to repel? Nope, just do whatever. Just I don't understand that. I don't understand the appeal of that at all. Anyway, that was I digress. Anyway, maybe they keep seeing other people praise Second Life, but aren't themselves interested in it, and that makes them feel left out. It feels like this movie was made to justify feeling like that. Feeling left out about Second Life, not being great at first person shooters. Of course, I don't like Second Life. Look how messed up Second Life is. Wouldn't it be funny if Second Life was actual people and they were forced to do all kinds of awful stuff by players? Of course I'm not good at first-person shooters. Look how chaotic they are. It's not that I'm not good at these games, it's that they're bad games. And I don't say that to make fun of anyone who isn't good at first-person shooters, or who doesn't like them. In one of the DVD special features, they talk about that they wanted for Slayers to be as chaotic as it is the first time a player tries online multiplayer first-person shooter. And I feel like they did a pretty good job. I remember being really overwhelmed the first time I tried something like that. So yeah, but I don't think it's a good idea to go for that in a movie where we're supposed to get invested in the characters and scenes. Like if one or more of the Slayers battles were one or more short films instead, I think that the people who currently don't like the movie and don't like those scenes would be talking about those scenes differently. Instead of saying that it's hard to get into those scenes because it's too chaotic to follow, they'd be saying, yeah, these short films are an accurate representation of what it's like to try online multiplayer first person for the first time. And that if that's the sort of thing you want to see, you should check out these shorts. But when you sit down to watch, again, the movie is 81 minutes, but still, so it could be worse. Again, Michael Bay is worse. Michael Bay is definitely worse. I doubt I will ever hate a Neville Dean Taylor movie the way I hate Michael Bay movies. But it's just, yeah, when you sit down to watch the movie, the choice to make it so chaotic actually hurt the movie overall. And it clearly was an intentional choice here. When you watch Crank 2, it's completely clear that the duo can put video game logic on screen in a way that's easy to follow for the audience. Jason Statham spends the movie going from location to location with a clear objective that he's following, getting power-ups, collecting weapons, defeating mini-bosses. A la Grand Theft Auto, he will very frequently steal a car to get to his next destination. You really would figure that they would be perfect for making a movie that's very directly video game, but I'm sad to say I didn't think that this was going to break the streak, but there's two good video game movies as far as you know, and they're called Press Start and Press Start 2. Continue. Sorry. That's I'll admit I haven't watched Detective Pikachu, but I know almost nothing about Pokemon, so that movie would be completely lost on me. And it sucks because I do love Ryan Reynolds. And I haven't watched Sonic, but I really doubt that that movie would. That is something I disagree with Phil Mento on. I don't agree with everything he says, and that is definitely a thing I do not. I really don't think I would like that movie. I see his point, but I really don't think. I probably said this the last time. I think this is going to be the last time for a while that I bring up the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, but I feel like they should just have made an adaptation of the Saturday morning cartoon, not the really terrible one, but the one with the where he's got like a group of allies and they're fighting Robotnik and his robots. Just I don't really understand why you need to bring Sonic into the human world and then make it a road movie. I really like why would you take a character renowned for traveling at great speeds and then put him in a car? Like traveling great speeds on foot and then put him in a car. It really like anyway. Actually, yeah, and Crank High Voltage is also in some ways a great video game movie. Yeah, so those are the three. Crank High Voltage, Press Start to Continue are the three video game movies where it really works. Jason Statham and Gerard Butler are both perfect for the tone Neville Dean Taylor go for, and Gerard Butler actually was supposed to star in Crank, but he was already cast in something else at the time. Excuse me. Now, with the Crank movies, Neville Dean Taylor really put you in the character's head with the filming and editing. Here, I'm not sure that here it's really more. Let me think. I guess some of the time it does still do that, but other than that, I feel like it is just yeah. I don't know. I don't think they're all the time in this movie going for that. So, like I said, I love the Crank movies, but I'm really not sure Neville Dean Taylor can do social commentary. I mean, the Crank movies are a lot of fun. They're not trying to say anything, and in a lot of ways, this movie is like the Crank movies, but it's also trying to say something. And yeah, that doesn't really that mix doesn't make any sense. And it also really seems hypocritical, criticizing violence and other provocative material when it's sorry, that imitates things that in real life are harmful. Among other things, racism, for example. I guess not so much racism in this, but like various the yeah various behaviors and mindsets, while at the same time trying to get the audience excited about the violence and such. The violence in this movie is not like the violence of a movie like Monster, where you take no pleasure in it, and you honestly really badly want the characters to stop committing any violence at all, other than that one cathartic scene of violence in that movie. And the Hunger Games movies and the Battle Royale, the first one, I haven't watched the second one, I think there's only two. it's also, not, you don't want them to keep committing violence. In yeah, Hunger Games and Battle Royale, the action isn't cool, it's about surviving. But in this movie, there is gratuitous violence. There are people who do violent things that they don't have to do. Folding Ideas points out that the games of Society and Slayers are more sport and reality TV than their video games, and I very much agree with him on that. It's it's a it's a failing of the movie that the really, yeah. It's frustrating that Tillman simply kills Rick Rape when we know, based on the concept, that he must be controlled by a gamer. And honestly, I feel like the scene could have worked if if instead of killing him, there was some sort of gun that destroyed the link or something. So instead of killing him, which, maybe like for a second we think that is what he did, and then like he opens his eyes again, we can tell he's himself again, and maybe it cuts to the gamer controlling him going, fuck, you know, and yeah, before I watched the movie, I was thinking maybe he was given that kind of a gun by the humans, and we just see that he draws a gun, fires it, and then only afterwards we realize it was that gun. But then watching the movie, I realized he only meets the humans after that. I guess it would have to have been that Alison Lohman slipped it in through the little cell, in the, yeah. Let's see. Anyway, something. I realize that's not perfect. It's kind of predictable, but at least Cable didn't just kill an innocent man. And imagine if he had a gun like that when he confronts Ken Castle, and instead of having to kill these Slayers, he actually freezes them and they attack Ken. Although I do acknowledge then we lose the incredible scene of him controlling them to attack Cable while lip syncing. That really is like an absolutely inspired bit. I wish way more of the movie was like that. I'm not saying exactly like that. I'm saying that Neville Dean Taylor came up with an incredibly clever idea and carried it out really well. Let's see. But yeah, the it's like the movie goes from making us empathize with the death row inmates, fearing their death, and then we have this, like, and we're clearly, as an audience, as a movie going audience, we're clearly supposed to think that it's disgusting when we see all these crowds cheering on Slayers, absolutely ecstatic about Cable and such, and then, you know by the time really the moment that they're in Slayers, we're not really supposed to want any of the Slayers to live. They're supposed to be completely disposable. And then, in society, again, they're disposable. I don't think there's a single second, a single frame of Tillman being upset that some of the people in society are being killed. For example, in the club, maybe some of them lost custody of their children. You don't. It's just there's and it could so easily have been that he, think about how exciting it would have been if he was determined to make sure that no one there dies, like that every single time like he does everything he can to, again, let's say he has some kind of projectile. At first we think he only has projectile, that if he shoots someone with that projectile, they become them, it cuts the connection so they can control their own body again. And then when he gets into the club, he he throws up, sorry, we do see him throw up in the movie. He gets a grenade, he tosses it into the air, and he doesn't duck, but the Ken Castle's men instinctively, like maybe in addition, like they turn around, they get around the corner or something because they think that it's an explosive, and it explodes, and like powder comes out, and it hits all the people inside the disco, and they can control themselves again. And Tillman yells, "Run!" And we see all these people running. You have the standard kind of action movie or disaster movie. The civilians are fleeing from something dangerous kind of bit. And then, once most of them have fled, Ken Castle's men come back in, and now Tillman is determined to protect the last remain. Maybe he pulls the Secret Service. Maybe he does the dive in front of someone because we know he's got the you know yeah, he's got the body armor, and maybe we don't see if he gets hit there, and then we assume, oh, I guess he just wasn't hit, and then we see when he gets hit by Hackman, then we see, no, he did get hit those other times, something like that. Yeah, it's just an engine, not thunder. Let's see. That saves me the trouble of having to call my thunder buddy. Let's see. That. Ah, 1 second. Yeah, I think that would make the scene more exciting, and just like, I get it. They want to put provocative material on screen, and you don't, you know, when it comes to a movie like Crank High Voltage, which also goes, puts a lot of really messed up material on camera, I don't think it's, like I said in my video about that, I don't think it's really harmless, but it is, I guess it's a guilty pleasure of mine. But in this, they are specifically, we know, because they told us several times, everyone in that disco is being controlled by someone else. These are real human beings dying brutally. I don't know. I guess the idea is we're supposed to sit there and curse Ken Castle as well as the players, but just think again. Tillman doesn't seem to care. He only seems to care about it, like, other than there at the end when he tells the techie to free them all. Other than that, he never seems to care about anyone other than his own family. I don't think there's a single time when he. Oh, sorry, never mind. He does. He tells Simon, "These are real human beings, you fuck." Is that him? I think that might. Anyway, there might be at least. Anyway, so let's see. So yeah, in the first Crank movie, action scenes tend to be very brief, and most it'll be, if something goes on for a while, it'll be like guns pointed at someone, or it'll be like the what's it called, like a scene of running or something. In the second one, the scope does get bigger, but yeah, overall this movie is bigger than Crank High Voltage, which is good. More than fights and shootouts, the action in Crank tend to be very sudden and swift changes to the status quo. And yeah, longer scenes are mostly tension and suspense. Compare this to something like the Captain America movies, where action scenes last for minutes with fighting and shooting throughout. This is less true of Captain America 1, but that one wasn't really focused on doing that. And yes, obviously, I realize in part it is a budget issue, and I I'm not sure Neville Dean Taylor are that interested in fights and shootouts that go on for minutes based on the way they approached the two Crank movies. They want to put things in movies that nobody else is putting in movies, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is subjective. And I'm not saying that the Captain America movies are superior to Neville Dean Taylor movies in all ways. They're definitely not as visually creative. And really, like, Man, I wish the Crank High Voltage had just been made as the first Crank movie. Anyway, but the first Crank movie, boy, the propulsive energy, the unpredictability, like it's a movie that within just the first few minutes, you know that you're in for something that's very unusual. And again, at that point, it's subjective, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like I can think of, you know, I know a lot of people who would hate the Crank movies, but who, there are other movies that I love that they also love, but at least it is different. We don't need more of the same. And just like immediately the concept is just, the whole thing of, he has to keep his energy up or he'll die. It's so unusual. It's not unique. I saw that there were some movies called DOA, among other things. There are movies, some of them called DOA, that have similar concept. Anyway, it is still very unusual, and the sort of the tone, again, it's not for everyone, but they go for it, and the Crank movies are the kind of movies where if they're what you're into, they're absolutely right. Where, comparatively, I would say that even at his best, Paul W. S. Anderson isn't that good at delivering what, like, when I was a teenager, I really enjoyed his movies, but I always knew that there were big problems with them. And I suppose maybe a bunch of his teen fans, and I'm not saying that as a derogatory term, maybe a lot of them don't notice or don't care about those things. But I would say the Crank movies are much better at the kind of, yeah, like I can't tell you how much I want to be able to recommend a movie like Resident Evil Apocalypse. There are so many things that movie gets so right, but then there are so many that it gets so wrong. At the end of the day, I can't really recommend anyone watch it. I've talked to some people who have already watched it, and we can agree that there are good things about it, but I can't imagine telling someone you should watch Resident Evil Apocalypse, no matter how much they might love the games. And that really sucks because I've only played the second Resident Evil game, but yeah, like when you play the second game, if there were to be a movie that gets a lot of that game right, it would be Resident Evil Apocalypse. I realize it also obviously takes some stuff from the third one, but it's just, but then it makes so many mistakes, and it's just like, where with Crank, like, I want the Crank High Voltage game. I would definitely play a game directly based on one. Obviously, it's a movie that's based on a number of games. That, anyway, Neville Taylor used to do music videos and such, and when you're working within such a short space of time, just a few minutes, it's fine to do fast editing, crazy camera work, and some stuff like that. But for an entire movie, it can get exhausting, and I feel like with this movie, it seems like they forgot that. I still, like, with the Crank movies, like, for sure, High Voltage can, I mean, yeah, the first one can also, like, I would never show it to, like, a boomer, for example. But unless I was certain that that particular boomer was especially, but, like, like, I've shown my father a lot of movies that he loves, but he would hate Neville Dean Taylor movies, but, excuse me, but excuse me, Crank High Voltage, for sure, like, it gets incredibly big and intense and such. But I've watched it, like I mentioned, I've watched it at least 3 times now. I watched it 10 years ago, and I watched it twice in 2 weeks now. And it just, it's not too much, in part because the you know it's not over long, and in part because the and that's the thing, like, for those who, if you legitimately don't, if you haven't tried and you don't believe me, I, you know, please actually try this. Please try to watch Resident Evil Apocalypse. If you think that Crank High Voltage is just as hopeless when it comes to pacing, that it's overwhelming, the way that, that's one of the many problems that Resident Evil Apocalypse has, is that it's just overwhelming. Like, I'll admit, when I was like 18, I thought it was amazing. I was like, ah, why aren't more movies this fast? But now it's like, holy crap. And I just feel like, and again, and Crank High Voltage is not like that, but if you have access to both movies, try to sit and watch and just notice how crazy fast the plot is moving in Resident Evil Apocalypse. Now, it's constantly really big, and oh, something incredibly important is happening now. And then watch High Voltage and notice that a lot of High Voltage, it is really like there's one thing, you know. It's that it's Chev has got to get his heart, he has to find some way to electrify his heart so he can keep moving, and he has to get to the heart so he can have it put back in his chest. But in Resident Evil, it's like, oh, here's another character. Oh, here's another character. Oh, by the way, over here, there's this other thing that's going on that's also really big. Oh, back to this, and it's just, holy crap, can you please just trim this shit down? Calm down, Paul. Just, it's like watching the movie, it's like if Paul W.S. Anderson was running back and forth in front of you saying, and then this happens, and then this happens, ooh, and then I really want this to happen. It's just, please come, take your Ritalin. Take Jake Chelios' Ritalin and calm down, But he has, there are people who love his movies unreservedly, and that's great. I do enjoy some of them with fairly little reservation, but yeah. Back to Gamer. The movie did not have to make so many of its characters so obnoxious, so over the top. This is, again, not a big problem in the Crank movies, but those movies are not trying to say something. We're not really supposed to relate to the characters in those movies. Like, when you're watching Crank, like, at most, you're like, oh, man, that's gotta suck. I don't want to be in that situation. Oh, that's gotta hurt. That's basically it. You're not supposed to fully identify with them. They're barely real characters. There's really not much weight there. It's mostly just, but with this, like, you're supposed to care about the daughter of Tillman and Angie, whose name I don't even remember if it's ever said. She has almost no screen time. She's practically a concept. We don't even see her face to face until the last few minutes of the movie. Like, when Tillman sees her, first he thinks that that's really her, but it turns out to just be video. And just, it literally, it might as well be like, instead of he has to be he has to get back to his daughter, might as well just be that, his, like, his brain holds the cure to this really, this really, this virus that's really hard to deal with, and so they have to get him safely out of Slayers. It's just, it's completely pointless. Like, the fact that it's a living person makes no difference to the plot, and if you can replace a character with an object in a movie, that means you haven't done a good enough job of making that character be a character. You don't have to do very much. Just give, fuck's sake, even Alien versus Predator Requiem does at least slightly better on the little girl that we're supposed to hope makes it out alive. And I really should never be in a position where I can say something positive about Alien versus Predator Requiem. So it's just, yeah. Let's see. I just feel like the satire would be stronger if it rang more true. The idea that the majority of society players would be so perverse and messed up is very hard to believe, and it hurts the satire and social commentary that the movie is going for. And it really wouldn't have been difficult to just say that it's actually only a very tiny minority of people who are doing this, but no one is stopping them. Maybe they pay extra to get away with this stuff. There, you have the commentary without it coming across as so cynical and hateful. The idea that a huge chunk of the world's population would be so disgusting with their player characters in society is just impossible to believe if this is supposed to take place in anything resembling our reality. And if you did, the movie would have to explain what happened to make us so messed up. And it just, again, it feels like a very cynical and bitter movie made by people who just more than trying to comment on something. They're just trying to say that, like, if Heath Ledger's Joker made a movie, this would be the movie. You know, like, this is what the Joker thinks all people are like, and it's just, and even if you want to say, oh well, you know, that's, yeah, sure, fair enough, that's their perspective, but it's not particularly unique. We've had a bunch, like, I haven't watched all of them, but Film Brain seems to. The what's it called? Not Departed. That's a good movie. The crap, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like a bunch of that's also, excuse me. That's also about like a reality show made out of a bunch of condemned, I think might be what it's called. Anyway, the or is that a video game? Anyway, the a bunch of death row inmates are forced to fight to the death, and I I'm pretty sure there's also like a reality show based on it. And again, the that movie, I haven't watched it, but I watched the Film Brain review of it, and it's very clear that movie also thinks very little of the people. I guess in that it's maybe more the people working on a show like that. But again, it's still like, as bad as reality television is today, it's just, or, excuse me, imagine if the, let's see, imagine if it was like a purely underground kind of thing. There are some awful things that go on when, when law enforcement isn't, see, I would like to say when they're not able to stop it, but I guess it's more likely that they're not trying to stop it. But there are bad things that happen that, off the books, under the table kinds of things. Guns and knives, starting some shit, and the yeah, like, or I guess, I mean, it wouldn't really make sense. Maybe there's a reality show where it's like sports or something. It's like, yeah. But there's also an underground game where it's the Slayers. That I would find a lot more credible. And then you can talk about, are we? I think that reality television is extremely exploitative, but evidently that's not the opinion of enough people, that it's just, like, there are standards for what you can put on television, but those standards don't go so far as to eliminate a lot of reality television. So yeah, like, that would be like, then you could draw a parallel. Then you could say, well, they're exploiting these sports people for this reality television? Would it be, are they, is there a huge difference between their exploitation and then the exploitation of the Slayers? You know, it does make it a little difficult to talk about that Slayers is both the name of the game and the death row inmates in the game, because I can't say the Slayer players, because the Slayer players are Simon and the other people back in their living rooms. Tillman is not a Slayer player, he's a Slayer on Slay. He's one of the Slayers on Slayers. That makes it several Slayers deep. 999. In addition to how many naked women are in Neville Dean Taylor's movies, a lot of the female characters and some of the male ones kind of act like they're in a porno, like jumping directly to the idea of sex and getting uncomfortably close to strangers and such. I'm not the first person to point out that in addition to video games and music videos, clearly Neville Dean Taylor have a head full of pornos, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. I'm just pointing out here. Again, it depends on whether you think that that is like that there is something really wrong with that. I still say it depends on what you use it for, and ultimately, the considering how cynical they evidently get, I think we're lucky that they don't go much further than they do. It's still really messed up. Excuse me. Something that would make the satire hit harder is if there weren't so many obvious problems with concepts involved. Let's see. I've already mentioned, Hunger Games and Battle Royale. One of the things is that you get much more of a, like, if you want to be completely, if you only want to skim the surface, you could say, again, I'm not spoiling those movies, don't worry. You could say Gamer and Hunger Games movies are about people forced to fight against their will who want to protect their family. But you get much more of a sense of who the characters in the Hunger Games movies are, and in Battle Royale. You learn much more about, like, what could you tell me about Tillman in this movie other than his past and his love for his family? Like, he has some sympathy for the other Slayers, but isn't that basically it? If you can't tell me very much about Katniss Everdeen, I mean, I guess if it's been a while since you last watched one of those movies, sure, but like, I could go on for a long time talking about Katniss Everdeen. You know, I would be able to go on for a long time talking about her without repeating myself, because there's so much there. There's so much meat on that bone, and some people would say, but this movie's so much shorter and there's so much less time spent with Tillman. But they wrote the movie, though. Neville Dean Taylor wrote the movie. They didn't have to make him such, like, I mean, he is essentially the protagonist, but at the end of the day, other than him sitting in the cell and then engaging in action scenes, there's not that's basically what he does, and then like he gets in a brief pissing match with Hackman in the locker room, and he talks some to the other death row inmates, but there's not a lot there, and there easily could have been, you know. Among other things, the whole society thing. Think of how easily it would have, how easily you could eliminate the whole society thing from the movie, and then you could spend much more time getting to know Tillman. you know, they could easily have a bunch of different scenes where he's in different, you know, he you could have scenes a la the first Hunger Games where he's, you know, he spends some time training, and you know, he sees some of the other slayers that he's gonna have to fight, and he's like trying to gauge how good are they at this, that, and the other thing, and what especially do I have to watch out for them to do these couple of things, you know, these kinds of things. Maybe you could have a scene where Simon chooses him as his, what is it, icon, and you, I I see what you did there. Con like convict, and icon like, you know, computer icon. It's, yes, that's not terrible. I yeah. And the let's see. Crap. What was the thing I was gonna say? Just, you know, you could, yeah, you could have scenes that flesh him out, where he's, you know, where Simon chooses him, and you know, maybe Simon disregards but isn't that a thing when like people, I don't care about sports, but don't people like read the biography of the person that they like, they especially get into, oh, I really want that guy to do well in the sports thing because in his background this and this. You could have that. You could have a thing about how, you know, Tillman's background, and you could maybe even have some full-on flashbacks, you know, because it's clear that the movie does want us to connect with him. That's why we get the flashback. That's why they keep bringing up that he wants to get back to his family. That's clearly why we get scenes of Angie, because there's no other, like, that's the reason Angie has scenes in the movie, is so that we very badly want Tillman to be able to get her to rescue her. You know, she's being sexually humiliated in society, so that the so that we'll want Tillman to get her out of there. You know, that's literally the entire thing. And again, if that's all you do with a female character, I'm not saying every movie that only does that with a female character is bad, but if you have one female character that you do nothing else with, but who's supposed to be that important, like she's a pretty major character, but almost all of her screen time she's being controlled by someone, being forced to do things she hates having to do. You know, and I really also feel like they could have, I don't know, I mean, is it supposed to be satire over the kinds of demeaning work poor people have to do? I guess the you know, but again, they take it to such an extreme that it's hard to relate to. You know, like, is it supposed to be that, like, today, you know, if you're especially poor, you might be forced into sex work, and this is what they're saying, like, that's what it's supposed to be about, that, like, hmm, I guess that does, I respect it a little more, because that definitely is a problem. I don't think there's anything wrong with sex work. I think there's something wrong with people being forced into sex work. I think if you choose it, that's great. And, you know, you should be treated well, you should be treated with respect. You shouldn't have a difficult time getting a different job. That's one of the problems. Right now, sadly, a lot of people who try to move on from sex work have a hard time, because you know, maybe they're able to get a new job, and then after a while, or maybe even when they're trying to get the job, the boss finds out that they used to be a sex worker, and then they lose the job because of that. And that's awful. You know, there you go. That think about if I guess that is the thing. She's having trouble. Yeah, when she's trying to get custody of the daughter, she's like, "Oh, I'm an actress," and he's like, "I don't remember seeing you in anything," and then she has to admit that she works in society, and then he respects her less. Fair enough. That wasn't. See, why? That's the thing. It's there though. It's just not. There's just not much of it. That's the problem. That's the problem with this movie. What's there? Like, is it maybe, let's go with 10%. 10% of this movie is amazing. I love it. I want more. But the rest, the other 90% just weigh it down. But those 10%, you've got sympathy for convicts on death row. You have commentary on how reality television devalues human beings. You have, the detachment between people, like, on one hand you have people working extremely hard and doing things they wish they didn't have to do as a job, and on the other hand you have people, in the real world today you don't have, again, unless it's underground, I guess, you don't have something like the game society in this movie, but you do have, you know forced, you know what's it called, forced labor, you know yeah, child labor, forced child labor. You've got poor children in very poor countries, breaking their back making shoes, and so that people in more well-to-do countries can buy shoes that, it can buy those same shoes, so you do have, and you've got, people not being respected because, people, and I like the detail that apparently, it doesn't seem like Angie really did something wrong. It's just that she didn't, you know when Tillman when she was with Tillman, he was the breadwinner, and that's the case for a lot of people, and then when he went to prison, she couldn't, she didn't have a lot of money, and so they took custody of her daughter, and that does happen to a lot of people. That is a big problem. I think you there are extremely few cases where you should take someone's child from them, like only if they are actively hurting this child, or like if they, are passively, obviously, but if it's just that they have a hard time making ends meet, then the first thing you should try to do is, help see if they can't, like, I don't know, if, food stamps or something, some kind of, but yeah, the basically she wasn't able to keep the custody of child. Now she's fighting for custody of child, and one of the things, is, yeah, she was basically forced into sex work, and that, yeah, there's a lot here. There's a lot to really appreciate in this movie, but then you also have all the, like, I'm not kink shaming here, but a lot of this movie is someone's kink. Society, that's someone's kink. Someone is getting off on watching the scenes of society, and I kind of feel like Neville Dean Taylor might be among those people, and I don't really think that it's wrong to put your sexual fantasy into a movie, but I do think that I think a big problem is that they're also trying to satirize. It feels like, what's it called, lampshading, kind of. They're having their cake and eating it too. They're getting away with putting really disgusting stuff. I I'm gonna be careful how I pick my words. It's not disgusting that there are people who find it arousing. It's disgusting that the movie is asking us to just view this as something that might happen. We're supposed to sit and like it's we're supposed to sit and think of it as something that's really happening. In the fiction of Gamer, this is actually happening. This is happening to I do they say how many people? I guess thousands of people, maybe more, all the time. And like Kira Sedgwick doesn't seem to be, I mean, she brings up a few issues when she talks to Ken Castle, but I guess overall she just doesn't really care. The humans care, they do care, but the we don't see very many characters in the movie who really genuinely care about how sorry, exploitative, there you go, the society and Slayers are, when that's the big that's the thing that should be like, yeah. And again, like, imagine if if they made a short film about the game Society instead. I think that could work as a piece of satire and social commentary, but as a part of this overall movie, where again it would be so easy to just remove it entirely. Like, I kind of feel like maybe they should have either made a movie about Society or one about Slayers, but the fact that they have both, just like, because by the end of the day, like, a bit into the movie, we're supposed to just pretend like the people in Society aren't real people being controlled, or I don't know, I guess maybe we're not supposed to forget, which maybe makes it even worse. We're supposed to sit there and think that we're watching, I don't know, I didn't keep count, but at least, if I had to guess, I think at least half a dozen people die in the disco, maybe more. Again, it's disorienting the way they filmed and edited it, but certainly there were a bunch of people there getting killed, a lot getting hurt. So are we just supposed to, because the Tillman doesn't even, like, except for there at the very end when he tells the techie to release everyone, other than that, he doesn't do any. Yeah, it's just, it could so easily be a lot better. I'm honestly, I don't remember about The Running Man if it's like satirical and social commentary. I remember that there are definitely comedic elements, such as Jesse Ventura, and yeah, I think it might be supposed to be like a satire over the, yeah. But isn't that also like, that's a very different world from our own? Something that really works well for the Hunger Games, and is a problem here, is I feel like you have a much better chance of making your satire work if what you're trying to say is, imagine if human beings were gladiators. Sorry, yeah, if what you're trying to say is, imagine if human beings were gladiators again, if you set it in a dictatorship. That's, I find the Hunger Games to be very credible movies, with a few obvious exceptions. I'm not going to spoil here. And then you have, let me think, and yeah, and Battle Royale is also government mandated by this military government kind of thing. Not a spoiler, you find that out almost immediately in the movie, and it is part of the core concept. But in this movie, if this is set in a dictatorship, there's not really any indication of it. There appears to be freedom of the press, among other things. The problem is a corporation with too much power, and that definitely does ring true. It's very hard to believe that corporations would get so much power that something like Slayers would be allowed. Like, think about how many different laws Slayers breaks. if we're supposed to think, the movie opens with saying, was it some time from now, from this exact moment, sometime from this exact moment, I think is verbatim. Well, how did we get there then? There are so many things, so many reasons why Slayers, the way it's in this movie, would not be allowed. It's just, yeah. So it like yeah, that's that. The concept is that there's simply too much money was being spent on Americans in prison, which is a nice touch, but then the movie never brings up that today a huge chunk of prisoners are actually in prison for non-violent drug offenses. The and that's part of like a huge, and it's not, according to the what we're told in this movie, they wouldn't end up in Slayers. They're not gonna, because you have to be on death row. Excuse me. And obviously, also a huge problem of government wasting money is the wars in the Middle East, but the movie doesn't want to comment on that aspect of government, wasteful government spending. It just doesn't bring it up at all. And yeah, it really is the movie could just be so much better if it wasn't so simplistic in its thinking. In the oh, Slayers exists because there's too many there's too many prisoners, and 68% of the American people voted on it, and now we have these just, yeah. Anyway, and this, yeah, that brings me to Outlaw Vern's review of Gamer, and I am only going to, yeah, yeah, so I am skimming the, I'm gonna, yeah, I just got done skimming the review itself. Now I'm skimming the comment section to see if I find stuff that, basically, you should read his review. I've enjoyed every yeah, everything of his I've read, but I can't vouch for all of it, but yeah, for sure there's, yeah. And let's see. Yeah, this one guy says that Vern criticizes that the movie uses the Marilyn Manson Eurythmics cover twice, and this guy says, I consider the first use of the song to be more of an intro. I mean, when a TV show uses the same theme as a closing theme that they use as an opening theme, it doesn't raise my ire. Smiley face. Winky emoticon. And let's see. copied in a bunch of... Right, and that brings me to, let's see, yeah, so, I rewatched Film Ryan's Bad Movie Beatdown, and I'm gonna skim his comments because my back really wants me to stop recording as soon as possible, rather than me reading the entire... We open in an... Sorry, I was gonna imitate Matthew, but I probably shouldn't. Anyway, we open in an intense fight. I can tell it's intense because the cameraman and the editor seems to be having a fight, with extremely shaky camera angles and quick cutting, so we have no clue what the hell is going on. I get they were trying to make... What's this? Nah, never mind. And... he points out John Leguizamo is the first of many recognizable actors in this to show up to do nothing. Yeah, he basically, the one thing he likes is the Sammy Davis Jr. lip sync bit. Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, so there's I've only been able to find one regular trailer from them. There's the Dookiness cut, which I I'm not sure I guess I ultimately didn't look that hard for it online, but otherwise it's on the it's on the DVD with the extras. But yeah, if I hadn't already decided to watch the movie, either the regular trailer or the Dookiness cut, watching those would have made me want to. And I think back in 2009, I think I did see the trailer and think, I'd like to see that, and I'm not entirely sure why I didn't. I think that was back when I didn't watch as many movies in theaters, but yeah, the regular and Dookiness cut trailers do give away major plot points. And let's see. And right, and I watched the Folding Ideas episode on Gamer, and I'm not going to... Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to bring up everything he talks about, but yeah, it's a great video, well worth watching. He does a really great job pointing out why society would not be as compelling as games that we have right now. Second Life, I think it was called, is a better game than Society because you can do things in Second Life that you can't in Society. Excuse me. So there are, yeah, that brings us to the DVD. There's 19 and a half, excuse me, minutes of interviews with cast and crew. And let's see. Yeah, and Gerard Butler talks about how he loves Neville Dean Taylor's styles and says that it's intact in Gamer. He straight up calls Neville Dean Taylor and Zack Snyder crazy. In a good way, but still, he's not saying like they should be institutionalized. He's saying, oh man, their ideas, they're crazy, but it's still, yeah, but he can get away with it. And let's see. Michael C. Hall talks about that Ken Castle feels like he's the only real person in his world. He's the only one who can really appreciate it. And yes, he really appreciates, what's that say, the talent of Neville Dean Taylor. And he compares society to The Sims instead of Second Life. I guess he's not really a gamer. And he appreciates this satire of the movie, that people are giving up too much power. And Amber Valletta talks about that society is showing the gluttony. It's showing what will become as an actual society. And she's really happy to work with Neville Dean Taylor and agree to everything they ask. And she believes the movie is going to end up great. Although I guess in interviews they don't tend to admit if they think the movie's going to end up terrible. Terry Crews seems to really understand his character, wanted to do his own stunts, and was allowed to. He wanted to establish himself as an action character actor after so many comedies. And Ludacris compares it to The Running Man, which he's a fan of. And Neville Dean Taylor themselves talk about they don't like faking things if they can do it for real. It's more visceral for the audience. And Castle grew up in the world of games and internet, so he takes it for granted to control games and other people. Other people are entertainment and useful to him, not real people to him. They want it for the guns in the movie to feel like stuff we really would have not many years from today. And then there's a 76.5-minute DVD special feature called Inside the Game Controlling Gamer. Where I found out that apparently it was originally called Game. They refer to it as that in this. Now, let's see. So, yeah, so they talk about how they got the idea, how relevant it is, not being able to go as far as cheaper work, the budget compared to other stuff with the same scope. Let's see. Michael C. Hall liked being able to beat up the big action hero. And apparently some of the buildings that that they used in this had been devastated by Katrina, which helps explain why they, yeah. And they actually originally wanted to do it in 3D. And let's see. Yeah. And There's also something called First Person Shooter, The Evolution of Red. It's 16 minutes, and they're talking about the camera, the digital Red 1 camera, which they used for shooting the movie. And yeah, I personally like the Dubinus cut trailer, but I guess I can understand why the producers thought it would be too much for regular audiences. And then there is the editing room, abridged script for it, and I don't appear to have copied in. I'm not sure if they put it up in 2009 or later. Some years from this exact moment, it literally says that. Video game designer and grade A douchebag, Michael C. Hall. And he speaks in a sort of southern accent. And points out that, you know, they just did Death Race, the Death Race remake in 2008, the year before this, so it wasn't even that special of a, yeah. So the government pretty much legalized murder because it makes for good TV. How the hell did this happen? Oh, right, this guy also compares, sorry, the author also compares Society to The Sims. I do like, it all started with my first game, Society, which is The Sims, except with a whole lot more tits. Can the players feel what their avatars feel, or do they just get off on voyeurism? I don't know, we don't really flesh that out. Yeah, and it also points out, you know, Surrogates came out the exact same month and year as Gamer. It's one of those, isn't it, where like those A Bug's Life and Ants, and there was like two volcano movies that came out at the same time from different studios. So yeah, Surrogates. I like Surrogates less. I think Surrogates has less good in it than this movie, in my opinion. You know, Surrogates was the first time I watched a movie that was so bad that I was like, I have to make a video about this. That was the very first video I made, was talking about how bad Surrogates was. And I watched the trailer and I thought this is going to be good. I was like, okay, sure, this is Jonathan Mostow, who ruined Terminator. Terminator 3 is such a bad movie. But maybe he's gotten better. That was years ago. You know, that movie came out in 2003. It's been 6 years. Maybe he's gotten better. And Surrogates is just such shit. Anyway, yeah. So again, the line. Anyway, gamers loved raping and beating the shit out of real people so much that the government let me televise gladiator-style fights to the death. That's so stupid that it defies belief. You think that's bad? All the slayers or death row inmates who will get released if they survive 30 games. That's fucking horrifying. The guy who's the best at killing people is the one who's qualified to re-enter society? And you know, brother comes on. We've taken over the airways. So Michael C. Hall is a bad man. These games are bad too. I really don't have anything shocking to say here. And each time there's a scene of a Slayers game, it says, you know, exterior, real life Call of Duty map. You know, number 1, 2, and 3. And And Gerard runs into a room filled with 500 slayers, all killing the shit out of each other. This is like a quarter of the entire U.S. population of death row inmates. Do people get the death penalty for jaywalking now? Let's see. Yeah, and the script points out, you would think that they would monitor for players talking to slayers. And yeah, it comments on the grenade survival by, yeah, I'll just read. An explosion sends Gerard through a plate glass window. I think I'm okay. Another explosion sends Gerard off an overpass. Luckily, this truck was here to break my. An even bigger explosion blows Gerard out into a dumpster full of rusty nails and used syringes. He dusts himself off and crosses the finish line without any internal injuries or permanent hearing loss. Let's see. And yeah, the Ludacris's character brings up, how did Logan Lerman get away with starring in a kids' fantasy movie after Gamer? After surviving a few more explosions, Gerard escapes. And as the Amber Valletta is described as being dressed in Fifth Element cosplay, which is pretty good. Yeah, I kind of appreciated the at one point she's dressed as Pris from Blade Runner. And Amber and Rick Rape go to mo- a hotel room, and Rick says, "Before we do this, just remember that I'm a sim too. I have no control over my." Gerard appears and breaks Rick in half, Bane style. Gerard enters and finds Michael surrounded by slayers. Michael makes them conduct a flash mob and then attack. Gerard Butler kills everyone. "I'm still going to kill you, but that was pretty awesome." Ludicrous and the rest of the humans are dead. I just have to kill you and then nothing can stop me. Beat. But first, let's pretend fight. A surviving exterior city night. A surviving humans girl teams up with Kira to hack the shit out of a conveniently located hacking box. Oh wait, sorry, was it a different place? I thought that they went back to the place where the humans were killed by the other. Maybe it was a different place. See, I'm sorry, but this movie is very disorienting. It really wouldn't have killed them to do a better job of establishing. No, that it might be a different place. Alright, we hacked cameras into Michael's basketball court to record him revealing his evil plan. We also hacked Logan out of jail and hacked the hackosphere to hack Logan back into controlling Gerard. Now let's get the heck out of here. Slide whistle plays. Gerard manages to slash Michael across the abdomen. Maybe I don't have as much control as I think I do. Bring his family in here. I'm going to try to make him kill them while keeping myself well within stabbing distance. I mean, literally, if he had like a taser and stood a little further away from Gerard, like if all he wants for Gerard to do is stab his family, why doesn't he have someone lock down Gerard's legs and then push the family to right in front of him so he can reach them? There's no good reason, and it's happened in so many action movies. It's so frustrating when the villain suddenly makes such stupid mistakes after being smart. Gerard jumps up and stabs Michael in the stomach. That's for controlling me. Stab. That's for threatening my family. Stab. That's for the series finale of Dexter. Then this script must have been written after 2000. Yeah, because that show ran from like 2006. I think it ended in like 2013, 14. So, yeah. Will you shut down the entire system? I know it will put you out of a job and lose you millions of dollars, but pretty please? And the tech leader bored. Yeah, sure. Taps iPad. Really? I thought that would be harder. Yeah, well, you know. Yeah. So now what? For such a fast-paced, hyper-violent dystopian action movie, it sure is fizzling out at the end here. And let's see. The comment section, let's see. Yeah, comments on the thing with, the guy who's best at killing people is the one most qualified to re-enter society. One commenter points out, makes sense if you're really sold on that whole prison is exactly the same as slavery mindset. Setting the winner free seems to have worked for the Romans. By the way, a lot of actual gladiators hated their job and constantly tried to kill themselves. This movie had one of the most obnoxious shaky cams ever. It wasn't merely a shaky cam, it was Krakatoa eruption cam. I guess this was the first Neville Dean Taylor movie I watched because there really isn't that much. It's about as crazy as in those movies. Now, let's see. And then they talk about what else to abbreviate. So I'm just going to skim and scroll, which almost became scroll or Skrillex. Scroll Skrillex. Really should refer to scrolling and skimming at the same time. Final section, critic sites IMDb and Wikipedia. With all the hype, this is the Rotten Tomatoes critics consensus. While the hyperkinetic action and none of the flair of Mark Neville and Brian Taylor's early work, Gamer has little replay value. It has a 30% on the tomato meter. Of the 80 ratings, 56 of them are rotten. Yikes. But yeah, it is the... Let's see. Okay. I am going to skim specifically through the ones where... Let's see. Okay, I marked 123 things. Eesh. It's been over 3 hours. Okay, I'm going to try to put... Again, I'm Skrillex. I'm Skrillexing here. Let's see. Neville, Dean, and Taylor simply spray their venom across the screen with little vision. Once again, making a friendly trip to the multiplex feel like undeserved torture. See, again, I don't think the Crank films are torturous. Was this before? Let me think. Didn't they write that Jonah Hex movie? I'm really glad that Josh Brolin got to make more comic book movies after that, because I've heard that movie's terrible, but boy is he incredible as Thanos and Cable. What to make of short attention span artists satirizing a short attention span world? I mean, that is kind of... It legitimately kind of feels like, you know, some people, you know, I'm not sure it's true of every person with, but some people who have like, what's it called? Is it like depression, or it's like if you have like low self-esteem, if you have big problems, if you have tall problems with low self, I'm sorry, that's bad. I shouldn't do that. Sorry. If you have problems with self-esteem, then for some people will stand and look in the mirror and basically unleash a lot of insults on themselves, things that they've heard other people say to or about them, things like that. This movie does kind of feel like Neville Dean Taylor, doing that for 82 minutes. It's a very... Yeah. The film is a cacophonous mess without a single interesting character. It's a mind-numbing dud of a movie that in reality is nothing more than a big-budget computer game splashed across the silver screen with an all-star cast. Were Stanley Kubrick and Russ Meyer alive and their minds merged, being John Malkovich style, the clash of their ids and egos might yield game. It will make you feel putrid, but it's satire that's sadistic, salacious, and audaciously entertaining. So ultimately, that critic did like it. Sorry, I am going through the Rotten Tomatoes critics reviews. And once again, there's a lot of really good reviews there, so I recommend you read them for yourself. I'm only reading and commenting on some very specific Excuse me. It's visually incomprehensible, emotionally empty, thematically nihilistic, almost entirely plotless, and it thinks those are virtues. It's true because it really is like the movie. They put a lot of effort into making sure it was as difficult to follow visually as it is. It's not like they just had a cameraman who had a bad back and they kept dropping the camera or something. No, they wanted it to look like this. A virulently ugly, unpleasant movie to look at, as well as an incredibly stupid one, an insult to the eye as well as the brain. And this person, Frank, gave it an F on the A through F rating scale, I think it's called. It's a mess of a film mainly because the Crank style of filmmaking doesn't really fit the material, because for the most part, the movie is played straight. It's a real shame because the premise sounded ridiculously fun. For starters, it's just plain goofy. Gamer scratches at the shameless energy of the Crank films occasionally, but it mostly goes, as if on rails, to the inevitable conclusion. A dull slog of endless action and sex, trying so hard to push the pleasure centers on the brains of its adolescent male audience that it wears itself and the audience out. The action scenes are a giant blurry glob of explosions, sudden attacks, and spontaneous graphic deaths. And that brings us to the Rotten Tomatoes user reviews. And I'm just gonna scroll Skrillex here. Metacritic critic reviews and Metacritic user reviews. Okay, I'm almost through all the notes now. Okay, right, and that brings us to IMDb. Yeah, I think I'm gonna real quick just let's see. I'm just real quick gonna read the taglines. In the near future, you don't live to play, you'll play to live. Who's playing you? The game is real. Apparently, this movie was filmed before they made, Crank High Voltage. It's pretty unreal that they managed to put out two movies that are this fast paced in the same year. That really, yeah. Hackman, Terry Crews, has a scar completely around his neck, indicating his head has been severed from his body, then reattached. For some reason, all of these were trivia. The following is apparently listed as possibly spoiling. I don't really know why. Anyway, Gerard Butler did not want his name in the credits after seeing the original cut. I don't think I really blame him. I wish it's had like a link to the article or whatever, interview, whatever, so that I kind of want to know what changed his mind, like, because I completely understand the, yeah. And that is it. So I'm just real quick gonna see, sorry, that is it for the prepared notes. So I'm just real quick gonna think if there's anything I feel that I haven't already said that I think I could say. I really do feel like it's a big problem for it that it's not set in either a dictatorship or an America where corporations have all the power. The world of RoboCop could have this kind of thing, or uh, something along that. I'm not sure I would say that this would happen in the RoboCop world, but you need that kind of world. You can't just say this is going to happen, and not when it's so extremely different from just, yeah. It's just so far away from anything even resembling. Anyway, I think that would have been good. I would have really liked if it has, because that's the thing. Like when you watch RoboCop, it's clear this is a world where corporations have the power. That's why they solve. See that RoboCop, there you have an ultra-violent movie with some sex and really messed up material, but that is saying something. Like the idea that like corporations, they don't want to. Is that a spoiler? I guess. No, you're told very early on in the first RoboCop movie, they don't want to pay. They don't. Is it just increased funding? I guess they don't want to increase funding on. Although I mean, today it's not that American police have too little money; it's that they spend it in the wrong. They have a lot of money and they're brutal towards the people. But then, when the movie was made, I think it was closer to being, or was it just the perception? I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, the corporations don't want to spend more money on the cops, so instead they I guess that might be a spoiler, but yeah, they try to solve it in another way. They try to create a product that will then be, that makes a lot of sense. See, if all you had to do was say the yeah, let's say that the American government ran out. Yeah, actually, we're specifically told that the American people voted for, 68% voted in favor of Slayers. If let's say that instead the backstory for this movie was that the American government ended up running out of money, and so it collapsed, and corporations took over control of America. And as soon as they got control over American prisons, they were very unhappy with how much money had to be spent to run a prison and how little money was being made off it. So they decided, you could have Ken Castle explaining this in the interview. As you know, the government ran out of money, and so they came hat in hand, begging to us, the corporate leaders. And I was assigned the prisons. I didn't ask for the prisons, but I was assigned the prisons, and I had to make a profit. And keeping them locked in there does not make a profit. But putting them out there, fighting each other, that makes a profit. Something like that. Just you, I there's so much good here. It's just overwhelmed by the bad. It's so frustrating. But no, I maintain if Neville Dean Taylor do make another movie, I really hope it's closer to something like Crank. It doesn't have to be Crank 3. Just make a movie that has that sort of energy and sense of fun. Like Crank High Voltage is a movie that feels like basically, you know, all the people in the the world that it creates, it hates all those people. It thinks that all those people are complete monsters, and they're all stereotyped and really awful in really negative ways. But I don't really get the sense that it's a movie that hates its audience. This movie hates both its characters and its audience. And then actually there are a few of its characters that it seems to not hate. Like, I don't think the Crank movies, when you watch the Crank movies, it's clear they know Chef Chelios is a bastard. He is basically a monster. Like, he's not the biggest monster, but like there's very little about him. He's almost irredeemable, and there's very little about him. He doesn't try very hard to redeem himself. But the in this movie we are supposed to the like we are supposed to identify with, or empathize with, is what I'm going with. Empathize with Tillman, and we're supposed to want him and his family to be safe. But then at the same time, the movie hates all the other characters and definitely the audience. Like, when you look at the representations of the audience, you have the obese gamer, you have the all the crowds around the world who are cheering on as these inmates are murdering or killing each other. I guess it's not murder if the other person has a weapon too, right? I think anyway. And it really, like, you could so easily remove the female characters. The editing script made a point that I didn't read aloud when I read it, but the the let's see. Yeah, Gerard shouts at Amber, "Shut up." She does for the rest of the movie. And, technically that's not entirely true. She does say a few things, but it's almost entirely true. And it is like she does almost nothing that affects. It really is like you could replace her character with some. Let's say that he wants to break out of. He wants to get out of the the in Castle stole his vintage car, and he wants it back, so he's gonna and when he's told if he makes the 30th game he's not gonna get the car back, so he breaks out, kills Ken, gets the car. You could even still have it end with him driving into the tunnel, if you know what I mean. And sorry, it was too obvious not to. And you could even have the flashback. It's just, he's flashing back to, I love driving this car so much, just like it would change almost nothing. It would change so little, and it's just, and again, like, I'm not saying every movie has to have strong female characters, but let's try to imagine how much you'd have to change if if you tried to write Black Widow out of Captain America 2, or let's see, I guess, and Peggy certainly also makes a substantial difference to the first movie. So, I mean, ultimately, they would probably have given the stuff she does to other characters, but which would be a lot harder to do with this movie. Sorry, in in the case of this movie, there's nothing for other characters to do instead of her. She's there to be, humiliated so that because some of the audience are going to get off on it, and some of the audience are going to, be even more determined to, we hope to, are going to hope even more that Tillman gets out and is able to get her out of there. But yeah, if you look at the characters, the character relationships, then Peggy makes a huge difference in the first Captain America. And in this, like, I don't even know what they like about each other. I don't know what anything about each other is like, you know, there's just nothing there. And it would have been so easy for there to be something there. Imagine, like, even if you want to keep it like kind of exploitative, imagine if they had made it that, like, maybe she has a past where she's, let's see. Nah, I guess, no, I don't really want to go there. Let's see. Maybe, nah, I guess, yeah, I'm not going to go there, but I'm saying it would be possible to go there. You could write in this real tear-jerky, tragic background for her, and because that's all that we have as it is this tear-jerky or other kind of jerky stuff for her. There's her character is in this movie so that people can get off on the sexual humiliation of her, the same that the society players do, or or so that the audience hopes that, feels even more passionately about hoping that Tillman will be able to get her out of there. That's it. So it would be, you know, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's not. I don't know that much about Eve from the Crank movies, but when I see her with Chev, there's clearly something there. It doesn't feel like by the time in this movie that they're even in the same place at the same time. Yeah, the first time they're in the same place at the same time. For a while after that, she's still being controlled by the gamer. So it really is only, and then a little later they do finally get to. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's okay when they share a little moment there, but it is still like, just when I watch the Crank movies, I feel that Chev cares about Eve, and in this, and think about how easy it would have been. Think about all you had to do was have it be that he keeps sending letters, and they keep refusing to send them to her or something. The way that Chev keeps calling Eve, and you know, I guess I'm not gonna give away. Yeah, just for various reasons she doesn't answer, and it's just, yeah, like it wouldn't be. I don't know. Maybe they felt that they didn't want to do too much of the stuff they do in Crank, because certainly there are differences in this and Crank. Yeah. Anyway, I do believe that is it. So yeah, like I said, personal rating is a 6 out of 10. I feel like there's 10%, sorry, there's 10% of really, really solid stuff here, and it's just, then there's 90%. The other 90% is just, I mean, not all of it is terrible, but it's just there's a good movie buried under that's being crushed under the weight of all the bad elements that they also put in the movie. Here is the thing. It really is like, yeah. I Yes, that is absolutely everything. So I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I'll catch